If you want to start a market farm, one of the key things you need to figure out is what crops should you grow, and that's what I'm talking about in this video. More on that coming up. Welcome to Modern Grower. Hello, growers. I'm Diego, D-I-E-G-O, and for the past 11 years, I've talked to many farmers on my podcast, Farm Small, Farm Smart. Check it out if you've never listened. I also started the company Modern Grower, which sells seeds, tools, and supplies to market farmers. So I've learned a lot over the past few years about the business of market farming. And I want to share what I learned in this video and all the videos that I do on this channel to make your journey into market farming easier. Whether you're somebody who's wanting to do a farm for the first time, or whether you're just kind of dabbling and you want to improve your farm business, hopefully these videos can make your journey more profitable, more enjoyable, and more successful. And maybe you'll watch them and realize, I don't want to do that. And that's a good thing. But today, we'll look at people who do want to do it, and we're going to talk about crops that you could use to start your market farm. I'm emphasizing could here because there isn't a perfect list. Because every market's different, every farm is different, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all list. But there is a general trend of things that work. Think about it like this. If you want to go on a diet and lose weight, the only real truth is you need to fix your calorie ratio. Calories in needs to be less than calories out. That's a universal truth. If you eat less and exercise more, you'll lose weight. But does it matter what you eat? Not so much. There's a lot of different systems. There's keto and high carb and high protein and carnivore and paleo and all that stuff. Yes, they have different dietary benefits, but they all fall under this tenet of input relative to output, and that ratio determines if you lose weight. And that's how I want you to think about what we're going to talk about in this video. The macro principle here is you're trying to sell high-value crops because you only have a limited amount of land with which to work with. What crops those are, there's some wiggle room. It's different from everybody, but that's the tenet. High value per square foot, high value per day. And then we're going to have niche crops to fill in the gaps. So let's look at some high value crops. What are they? And we talked about how to determine what a high value crop is in the last video using a crop value rating system, which scores crops anywhere from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, based on things like days to maturity, how profitable it is, the popularity of it, how much you can harvest it over a given time period. The higher it scores on 5, the higher it scores closer to 5, the better it potentially is. You can learn more about the crop value rating system by going back one video. One of the first crops that works well on many market farms are microgreens. Why? They're highly profitable and they don't take up much space. You don't even need land to grow them. You can grow them in a room just like I'm in right here. In fact, I could have a huge microgreen operation behind the camera and you would never know it. So that's why many farms grow them. High profitability, very quick growth cycle. They're typically ready in 7 to 21 days after seeding. There's, depending on market, a high demand from chefs and a high demand at farmers markets from health-conscious consumers. Notice I said some markets, not all markets. There may be competition. There may be markets that just don't get it. That's with any of these things, okay? Again, this gives you a starting point. Microgreens work because they satisfy what we're looking for. We don't have land, so we want to compress value, right? It's like a spaceship. It's going up into space. Everything we put on a spaceship is extremely costly to transport from the Earth's surface to space. At least it is right now. So if we put it on that ship, it better be damn valuable to us up in space. You're not going to take, white bread up there or a bowling ball, stuff like that. You're going to take things that are highly valuable because it's extremely expensive to get it up there. Think about your crops that way. Every bit of land you have, going vertically or horizontally on the land, is valuable because you can't add more land, usually with a market farm. So microgreens enable us to compress value. We can take a little tray that's 10 by 20 inches, which we sell at shop.moderngrower.co. Check them out. And you can get a lot of value out of that. You might be able to sell that tray for $20. Maybe your cost is, I don't know, $10. You make $10 a tray, and you grew that in 10 days. And you can just keep cycling that. There's many, many profitable microgreen farms out there that only grow microgreens in very small locations. In fact, I have a podcast called the Growing Microgreens podcast that focuses just on growing microgreens. If you want to learn more about microgreens, check out that podcast. Also, the other videos on this channel by my colleagues Seth Davis and Chris Thoreau, they're just doing videos on growing microgreens. So microgreens are an amazing crop for a standalone crop for a farm, like I just grow microgreens, or they can be a nice add-on crop for a market farm. So they're high value, short days to maturity, high demand. Salad greens. I've kind of beat this one over the head. Lettuce, arugula, spinach, some sort of mix of greens. They're highly profitable, 30 to 50, 60 days to maturity. There's a lot of demand for local greens, and they're usually sold for $7+ a pound, sometimes over $10 a pound, depending on the market. Good profitability there when you start to really run the numbers. And I've done videos on how to calculate the costs of crops or how to think about that. Herbs are often high value. Basil, cilantro, parsley, mint, those types of things. You can get a lot of frequent harvesting, typically what you can sell them for versus their weight. That works out for you. So I sell not much weight for a decent price. Some of these things can be perennials or very long season crops, and there can be good demand for these. Doesn't work in every market, but it's a nice filler. You're not going to have just an herb farm unless it's this type of herb farm. But actually, sidebar, from talking to a lot of cannabis growers, not as profitable as people think. People are like, you're only going to make that much money on a farm if you're selling weed. Well, from talking to a lot of weed growers, the weed growers aren't actually making that much money. In fact, right behind the camera, there used to be a store that sold to the weed growers, and it went out of business. So maybe not as profitable as you might think. So the herbs, the culinary herbs, there's something there, generally high value. Flowers. I think this is a big trend in market gardening. You're seeing many, many small-scale flower farms crop up. The majority of flowers come into the country from other countries, from places like Ecuador, Colombia, and things like that. They're imported in. There's a demand for local flowers. And a lot of people make really good money selling flowers and then value adding them by providing wedding services as part of their farm. They turn them into bouquets and sell them to stores and farmers markets. And a lot of times those bouquets can be sold for much more than salad mix. If you think salad mix is expensive at $10 a pound, there are people selling bouquets for $30 a bouquet, and people are buying all of them. So there's a huge demand for flowers. Like food, it is consumable. The flowers wilt and die, so people want to put more ones out. People love the look of them. The growth time, 60 to 90 days. There's demand in certain areas. Could be an add-on to a farm. Could be just a small-scale flower farm. I've done a series of podcasts with some flower growers in the past, talking all about that. There's other flower grower podcasts out there. You can check out Florette's book on flower farming. She's kind of the leader of the flower growing industry, at least on a small scale, or one of the leaders. But there's something there. They're definitely high value. Well, we can sell high value crops. We can also sell quick growing crops. Quick growing crops mean we grow it, we harvest it, we plant it again. We grow it, we harvest it, we plant it again. And we just keep cycling, going around and around and around and around. That's a win because we're selling a whole bunch of stuff. We'd rather sell if profits and yields were equal. So yield per bed is equal, profit per bed is equal. Over 100 days, what would you rather sell? One crop for $100 or 3 crops for $100 each? It's obvious. You'd rather sell 3 crops for $100 each. That's why quick growing crops matter. That's why one metric we really want to track is dollar per bed per day on our farm. The higher we can get our dollar value per linear foot of bed per day, the better it is. That means we're turning the crop quicker. Okay. This is a In-N-Out burger, which we have in California. Look at their drive-through. It's like crazy. It stacks up huge lines, tons of cars going through it. They can get those people in and out, no pun intended, really quick. Different model than somebody who goes to a sit-down restaurant and sits there for 45 minutes and eats, and then they have to free up the table. The drive-through's the quick-growing crops. It's just pushing people through. Radishes, turnips, beets are all crops that you can think about. They're moderate to high profits, 25 to 70 days growth cycle, depending on the season, depending on the variety, usually good market demand. So there's something there. Most market farms have a root veg assortment of some type. Radishes, baby radishes, storage radishes, beets, baby beets, storage beets, turnips, bigger ones, smaller ones. Like, you got to find what works. But there's usually something in that category that's going to work in your market. So explore that one. You can look at specialty or niche crops. These are things that maybe work in certain markets, maybe don't work in others. Heirloom tomatoes. They're hugely popular, especially if you grow them when other people don't. This is where you want to try and come to market first. You want to be first to market with tomatoes. You don't want to be selling them when everybody else is, because now it's not so special. People get sick of them. You want to grow them early. You maybe also want to grow unique things. When I used to do the Urban Farmer podcast with Curtis Stone, he didn't grow heirloom tomatoes. He grew what are called saladette tomatoes, bigger than a cherry tomato, smaller than a slicer tomato, ping pong golf ball size that you could like slice up and put in a salad. They're different than what other people had. It stood out. Chefs liked them. It worked in his market. So you got to find what works for you. Maybe it's colored tomatoes. Maybe people look at colored tomatoes and like, I don't know what the hell that is. I've definitely heard stories from farmers in places like the South where, like, if the tomato's not red, people aren't buying it because they think it's weird. That could be the case. But typically, high profit margins. There's a lot of maintenance on the crop, but the crops usually work, especially because you can harvest tomatoes for a very long period of time. Plant a tomato, start harvesting it 90 days later. You might harvest it for another 90 plus days. Very different than a crop like corn. Plant it at 90 days, you harvest it, you got to pull it all. And then maybe you got to replant it. Okra. This is a specialty crop. Certain markets, Texas, the South, people crush it on okra. People love it. They might sell it for $3, $4, $5, $6 a pint. It works in certain areas. Seasonally, people look for it. You try and sell it in California, you're not selling any. Probably try and sell it in New York, you're not selling any. But areas of the South, a lot of people make good money on okra. Peppers, there's a whole variety here. Hot, sweet, specialty ones, unique looks, unique colors. They could be managed in a way where you can get long seasons out of them. Not a lot of babying them. Tomatoes take a lot of care, pruning and winding. Peppers, not so much. So that could work. Cucumbers, popular crop in many areas. Typically fetches a high value. certain sizes. People maybe like small ones or pickling ones. Like you learn to go what works. These crops are okay. Notice there's not things like melons and squash and pumpkins. That's not to say that those crops don't work. They absolutely can, but you're not going to see them on this list because typically they're not meeting a lot of the criteria of popularity, high value, long harvest period, and in short turnaround. We can look at high demand staple crops, carrots, garlic, zucchini when harvested a certain way. This isn't harvesting the zucchini babies that people harvest where they're like, look at my zucchini. And it's kind of like a porn video gone wrong. Or the zucchini episode of Big City Greens where Bill makes everything with zucchini, because that's kind of the joke, right? Like you grow a zucchini and suddenly it takes over your life. You're doing everything with it, and they're just too big. These are much smaller patty pan style squash, mini zucchinis. So you're getting a premium price because they're cut like hot dogs. So this is maybe a porn video gone wrong the other way, little small. And you're harvesting those and getting a premium price. And you could harvest them often because they're not putting all that energy into getting this big, huge fruit. You're getting small ones and you just keep harvesting so it keeps flowering and the plant thinks it's dying, so it's putting out its spawn. That's what happens when you harvest. It thinks it's dying, it needs to reproduce, so it flowers more and you keep harvesting and it just keeps the cycle going. That's what you can do with zucchini. That's how you make zucchini work, not selling the massive third legs that some people harvest. Garlic can work in certain areas, can be very profitable. You could see profits or total value on that bed of $600 to $900 per bed. You could harvest escapes along the way. Carrots are often a staple for many market farms. I don't know if you'll find a farm that's a market farm that doesn't grow carrots. If they don't grow it, it might be because they can't or they struggle with it. It's a notoriously hard crop to grow because it's hard to get consistent germination year round. I don't think you're going to find anybody who says carrots don't work in their market. It's one of those crops that works for many reasons. You can be eaten raw. So there's a whole category of crops that you don't have to cook. And a lot of people like me, I don't want to cook stuff. So I just want to eat it as it comes. Tomatoes, root veg, salad, carrots. I'm not cooking any of that stuff. If I have to cook it, it's like another step. I'm kind of turned off by it. People identify with carrots. They see them. They're a bright color. That orange, it stands out. Kids know what it is. Parents know what it is. You give somebody a fresh carrots, like a tomato. It's very different than what you find at the store. People often love the flavor. And you'll hear parents say, I give these to my kids. They're the only vegetable they'll eat. You can sell them with the tops on, look all gourmet. So carrots often pencil out for many farms. Additional considerations to think about here. Gap filler crops. You want to provide somebody with a basket. Now, you could be specialized. Okay, that's one thing to go down, and we can talk about this in a future video. Interviewed a farmer from Los Angeles here who just grows microgreens, and they just sell microgreens at a farmer's market. Now, when somebody comes up, they buy microgreens, they leave. If they want tomatoes, too bad, we don't have them. Now, the good thing is that grower just specializes in microgreens. They don't have to worry about growing tomatoes. But one individual can only consume so much of one product. Microgreen salad makes carrots. They can only eat so much. So if you have 50 people come by your booth and all you sell is carrots, each person has some limit on the amount of carrots they can buy. So you're limited by how many people come to your booth. The more people that come, the more you can sell. But if you have now carrots and lettuce, I can buy my fill of carrots and I can buy my fill of lettuce. I'm now getting 2 items sold to that customer. And I can start adding more on in basket filling. So I'm increasing my average order value up by providing more stuff. That obviously comes with more complexity on the growing, crop planting, harvesting, selling side, but there are some benefits. So you may need to grow filler crops that just fill in seasonal gaps, that fill in small gaps around the farm where we don't have a ton of land left, but we can put in some herbs here. They wouldn't be a main driver, but this doesn't take up any space, and we might as well sell them and bring them. We have it here. They can add diversity and visual interest, and they're low maintenance crops that are easy to grow. Maybe it's things like corn, melons, and fruit. Maybe it's not. If you have the room, those could work. If you don't have the room, those could be disasters or killers. So be cautious of taking those on. Now, fruit often works because usually the fruit tree is growing somewhere else on the property. And it's there and it's going to produce fruit anyway. And all you got to do is pick it. So if you're lucky enough to have apples or peaches or figs or persimmons on your farm, it's a nice little bonus crop to sell throughout the year. But be careful about the filler crops. You don't want to get too far out into the fringe where you're taking something that's not bringing in a lot of value and you're allocating a lot of resources to it. This is the exercise that doesn't do anything for you, but it really takes up a lot of time in the gym. I don't know, one of these things where you hold the dumbbells and you go like this, right? You're wasting time. You're kind of burning some energy doing it, but this isn't doing anything, right? It's an ineffective exercise. There can be ineffective crops. You can think about season extension. We'll talk about this as another way to get more value, because as you're adding more land by growing deeper into the year. So also growing crops earlier or out of their main season can raise their value. I talked about tomatoes. You sell tomatoes in May, you have an advantage over somebody selling tomatoes in June or July. You have salad mix in March. Maybe that's an advantage over someone else not having any. So season extension can play. And then do research. What works in your area? What are other people growing? Where are there holes in the market? There's that saying, you need to find the niche in the market. Where's the area of the market that you could plug in? And then find the market in the niche. So you have to find how you can make that little niche profitable. Where's the niche in the market? And where's the market in the niche? Do your own research. These are starting points that I think are universally accepted as starting points. If you poll all the market gardeners in the US, many of these crops will be on the list of crops they grow. When you start to do that Venn diagram, these are the commonalities. It's like, what are the same foods that most Americans eat? It's probably like Cheetos, Coke, white bread, hot dogs, and blow pops. I know it's not that, but it's like the same things, right? It's peanut butter, it's bananas, it's potatoes, it's hamburger, it's pasta, it's pizza. Like, it's the same thing. These crops cluster to come together. You don't use it as gospel. I'm beating that into people's heads because too many people say, like, this list doesn't work in this area. That's not what I'm saying. Start here, find what works regionally, and hopefully it gives you success. If you want to learn more about the business of market farming, check out my podcasts. I do a lot of them. The 2 podcasts to check out, Farm Small, Farm Smart, and the Growing Microgreens podcast, both of which are linked to below. We talk about the techniques of growing. We talk about the business of growing. You can learn a lot, not just from me in those, but from other growers, peers, colleagues who've done it. There's a ton of resources out there today on market farming. When I started doing this 10, 11 years ago, there wasn't as many resources. So now there's a ton. If you're getting into this, there's no excuse for not getting your ducks in a row before you start and at least being prepared. That doesn't mean the journey and the reality of it won't shock you and throw some loops at you, but you should at least go into it with a good mindset. Let me know what you think about this video. If you have comments, future topics, questions, drop them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.